President Trump tweeting moments ago that 3 detained Americans have been released from North Korea. They are now on their way home. And President Trump says he will meet them when they arrive in the U.S. at about 2 a.m. Eastern Time. So let's discuss with CNN military and diplomatic analyst John Kirby and CNN's Will Ripley, who has traveled to North Korea 17 times. John Kirby, let's just start with your reaction to the president's news.
Yeah, terrific. Absolutely significant news, and good for those families, good for those 3 Americans. This is what we would call at the State Department a CBM, a confidence-building measure, obviously baked into the plan to agree to have Trump sit down with Kim Jong-un. So you saw that Kim didn't react to the exercises. Kim hasn't done any launches, and now Kim has released these 3 Americans, all part of an orchestrated framework to get to the summit. So obviously good news, and certainly indicative of the fact that Kim Jong-un has taken this summit seriously, that the North Koreans really are serious about wanting to sit down. It does not, Allison, mean that the summit will be successful, or that we'll have peace in our time, or that North Korea will immediately denuclearize. It does mean they're serious about the summit, though.
Will, you talked to one of the people who was just released. What did you learn about why he was there, what kind of person he was, and just how hard and fast the Korean grip was on him and the others?
Yeah, I was in North Korea just after one of their nuclear tests in early 2016, and Kim Dong-chul was presented to us. It was a complete surprise. At that point, nobody knew that a U.S. citizen was even in custody, and he had already been in jail for several months at that time. He gave me a really detailed confession about espionage, saying that he was smuggling information out of North Korea to activist groups in South Korea. I didn't know at that time, and frankly, I still don't know whether that confession was made under duress. It was interesting. They made him speak in Korean when he was talking to me, even though he did speak some English. We believe that might be because people in the next room were listening and writing down every word that he said. Obviously, all the rooms in North Korea are bugged. Clearly, he's been serving hard labor. The other 2 who were detained in the spring of last year hadn't actually been formally charged yet, so they might have been held in the equivalent of the jail as opposed to the hard labor correctional facility. But obviously, none of these 3 men were in very good conditions, even though President Trump's saying their health is good. Clearly, their families and they are certainly going to be happy that they're coming home right now.
And so the larger implication, John Kirby, does this mean to you that Donald Trump has won over Kim Jong-un on some level?
No, it doesn't mean that at all to me. It means that that Kim is serious about sitting down with President Trump, and certainly this is what we're getting in return for giving them a big concession, which is having the President of the United States sit down with the North Korean dictator, which is unprecedented. So this is a transaction, and we need to look at it that way. It is obviously great news, and I don't mean to diminish that, but it is a transaction that gets us to the summit, and it doesn't guarantee anything beyond that.
Hey, look, if we're going to talk about people who are being held, I'll shed some clouds on this. The Trump administration deserves kudos for this, just like with Otto Warmbier. I mean, they got people home that were not able, that was not able to be done by the Obama administration. 2 of these guys were taken under your watch with the Obama administration, John Kirby. But there are people being held in Iran. And now that they're angry about what's happening with the deal, doesn't this necessarily negatively impact the chance of getting them back?
It does, actually, Chris. That's a great point to bring out. I mean, the Iran deal getting scrapped yesterday means that the Revolutionary Guard and those that are holding those 5 Americans in Iran are not going to be necessarily inclined to look for their release or to try to work for their release. And it's going to be much more difficult for this administration to negotiate their release, because we have violated now a commitment, an international commitment that we made. So I have to wonder that the families of those 5 Americans are looking at today's events, obviously very, very bittersweet for them, because it means probably that it's going to be much harder for their loved ones to get to come home.
Very quickly, Will, the president has tweeted that when this plane with these 3 American detainees lands at Andrews Air Force Base at 2 a.m., he will be there to greet them. Obviously, he says very exciting, and their families agree. We can only imagine. What do you think that they're, from having covered this, their families are thinking right now?
Well, obviously, the last few days have been excruciating for the families. Remember, it was less than a week ago that I spoke with an official who told me this release was imminent and that the North Koreans had actually decided 2 months ago they were going to do this. But at that time, the U.S. said, we're not going to conflate the denuclearization issue with the release of these Americans. This is a goodwill, good faith gesture ahead of the summit, but it's not going to get any nuclear concessions on the part of the United States. Apparently, those are the details they were working out. But it has been truly extraordinary to listen to the press reports coming out of Pompeo's visit in Pyongyang, going from threatening each other with nuclear annihilation to they had a lunch today where they were toasting each other, and Secretary Pompeo saying that the North Koreans have been great partners in arranging this summit. It's just a truly extraordinary turn of developments.
And let's just remember, this is the end for us in terms of waiting for them to be brought home. It's just the beginning for them. They were under horrible conditions, emotionally, physically. This is going to be a tough road for them and their families, so we'll be sensitive to that.
Okay, Will Ripley, John Kirby, thank you very much for the insight.